Hello, school librarians. My name is Victor. I'm co-founder and CEO of Scribble, and I'm joined by Rebecca Scott, who's a school librarian at Downers Grove North High School in Downers Grove, Illinois. And we're going to tell you a little bit about Scribble and how it's being used at her high school, as well as the Oak Park and River Forest High School. And Rebecca will tell you more about that when we get into it. As I said, I'm one of the co-founders, and Scribble is a really advanced research and writing platform. And I think it's the most advanced thing of its kind that's ever been built, which I know is a big statement, but when you see what it does, I think hopefully you'll appreciate that it is a really advanced research and writing platform. We've been backed by the National Science Foundation. Also, we are partners with both Google and Microsoft. And I like to tell people by way of background that I started this company because I needed something like this when I was in school and even in the workplace. And we are kind of really trying to advance the way that folks do research and writing. So let's jump right in, and I'll kind of explain what it is that we're doing. We are addressing this sort of massive crisis in research and writing skills. As many of you know, and frankly live and breathe every day, about half the students that come out of secondary grades in this country struggle with research skills, and they're not necessarily ready for college-level writing. It's a problem that's very well documented and starts very early. Some people would say as early as late elementary. We tend to focus on it primarily in secondary grades, although we do have people using Scribble in late elementary as well. And this problem, as you all well know, unfortunately continues on into college, where college instructors complain about how unprepared students are in these arenas of research and writing. And then, of course, it continues on into the workplace, where the National Commission on Writing has this eye-popping number on, frankly, the amount of productivity lost every year due to bad writing in the business world. So we've worked with lots of educators across the country, classroom teachers of different disciplines, school librarians like Rebecca, and we've also dissected the workflow to try to understand why it is that this work is so difficult. And as you can see, and as you probably have experienced, when it comes to research and evidence-based writing, it is a very complex, process-intensive learning experience with lots of different steps and skills along the way. And what's happened historically is that students and teachers and librarians have had to cobble together a bunch of different apps or tools to do different parts of the workflow. So they might use this citation tool, this other web clipper thing, this annotation tool for PDFs, etc. And they cobble all those things together, and it really leads to a disjointed, fragmented workflow. Students have a hard time staying organized as a result, and teachers and librarians have a hard time teaching and tracking students through that process because all the student data and the work is trapped in all these different data silos. So our answer to that has been to basically build Scribble as this sort of super app that lets you essentially do all the work in one place. We help students curate, annotate, cite, build an outline, build a bibliography, and then integrate with Google Docs and Microsoft Word when they get into the writing process to help them easily bring the research into the writing process. And then we take the data that comes out of that workflow and we actually make it available to teachers and librarians in an analytics dashboard so that they can see, for the first time ever really, where students are in the process in real time as the work's actually happening. So this is sort of revolutionary stuff because normally you just don't have great access to the work and the data as the work's actually happening. And so we feel like what we've built is the first real kind of comprehensive solution in this area of research and writing. And it is something that saves students and teachers time. And the data that comes out of the work the students are doing is meant to basically help teachers and librarians provide more personalized instructional interventions for students as they're going through the process to help them move along and not get stuck or procrastinate. So I'm going to just quickly mention, and I won't go into a lot of detail in this kind of quick overview, but we are partnered with both Google and Microsoft, as I mentioned, which means that we work with the tools that are already being used, frankly, in your schools and in your classrooms. As you can see on the left-hand side, we describe how we're integrated with Google, and on the right-hand side here, how we're integrated with Microsoft. And the gist of it is that we provide single sign-on with both ecosystems. We have a browser extension that really helps you curate, annotate, and cite as you're doing research. We integrate with both word processors and some additional integrations as well. And you'll see some of that here in just a minute. So what I've got is a couple screenshots that give you a quick sense of how the product looks and works. And then when I hand it over to Rebecca, she's going to show you what it looks like from a practitioner standpoint, from the perspective of a librarian that's actually working with teachers and students through this kind of a workflow for a particular assignment. So in the overview, what I wanted to point out is that this is an example of a teacher dashboard that you're looking at right now. And for a particular assignment, we're able to show teachers and librarians, frankly, how many students are on target and off target for the different steps in the process. So we can show you, for example, how many students have started the research or not, started the paper or not, or met certain goals, like having a certain number of citations and words in the paper for a particular assignment, like a research paper in English class or social studies class. What this allows is that the teacher can see at a glance a lay of the land and to see where everybody is in the process. You can kind of see who may be progressing quite fine and who you need to focus more time and energy on. And so, for example, if you see it's three days before the paper's due and you see that 5 of these students haven't even started the research yet, now you know where to focus your time and energy and who you might need to pull over at the end of class to have a discussion about what's going on. We also have data at the individual student level as well. So we can show you, for example, Jordan here has collected 6 articles. She's met the first goal of having 5 cited sources in the paper. She's on her way to meeting the second goal of having 1,000 words in the paper. Susan here is a rock star because she's all in the green and she's already turned the paper in. And Kara here is has a lot of work left to do, right? So this is all information that's great to know sooner rather than later, so that you can basically help the students course correct and get back on track before it's too late in the game. And for work like this, meaning research papers and projects, which do take a long period of time, it is really important to be able to provide that feedback early on before it gets too late in the game. Because, for frankly lengthy projects and papers, if you don't get it right the first time, there isn't oftentimes time in the term to go back and kind of do it over again. And then I should mention that most of this data is around progress tracking, but this last column is a little bit different. It's actually about the content and kind of where it's coming from. So we are able to automatically bucket the content that students are pulling in as part of their research into some major categories. So if we were in the actual app and I was hovering over these different pie slices, you would see that 2 of these articles are coming from government websites. One's a Wikipedia article, which might be a no-no. 2 of them are coming from academic websites and so forth. And we're also compatible now with a lot of the databases out there that are being used, like EBSCO, Gale, Britannica, et cetera. And so we're actually now able to also show not just kind of what open web resources students are pulling in, but also what kind of database articles they're pulling into their work as well. And this has become so important in the last 18 months because of this whole fake news thing, where librarians and teachers are much more concerned about the credibility and diversity of sources that students are using as part of their work. Last thing I should mention here is that when an assignment is being done using Scribble, we are not only able to give librarians and teachers kind of the aggregated and abstracted analytics like you're seeing here, but we're actually able to give them access to the student's actual original work as well from the get-go, the whole way through the process. And the reason for that is that when the student is actually doing their work, we're able to provide all that information for the teachers and librarians in what we call an assignment library. And teachers and librarians can sort of basically jump into a student's assignment library to be able to check out their sources, their annotations, their citations, their bibliography, their outline, et cetera. And it really gives you sort of unprecedented access to the work in real time in a way that historically just wasn't possible. And so what we've been told is that this can be a real game changer in terms of how you access and provide feedback on the work, because normally what ends up happening is that it's like herding cats and pulling teeth to get the work in front of you, and then you burn a lot of valuable class time on the one-on-one class check-in. What's nice here is that you as the teacher or the librarian have the ability to be able to log in and sort of see the student's work at any point, whether it's during the day or when you're not teaching at home, and be able to see the student's work from the very beginning and provide more timely feedback. And the virtual check-ins really allow you to do that. So that's a little bit about what you'd see, and there's more that we have for teachers and librarians as well, but in this quick overview, that's kind of what I wanted to point out. Let me switch gears really quick here and now show you what it looks like from the student's perspective. So the example here now is that I'm a student who's writing a research paper about space exploration, and I'm out there on the web or in a database, and I come across an article on in my browser like the one that you see here, and the student would click on our Chrome extension. And when they do that, 2 things happen. The first is that this article gets saved to the Scribble library in the cloud with 1 click, where it lives forever, even if the original goes offline, which is nice because now you don't have to worry about broken links when you bookmark something in the browser. And the second thing is that we load this toolbar on top of the page, which allows the student to then richly annotate the article right in the browser. So they can literally highlight passages they might want to quote later in their paper. They can add comments in this comment sidebar to be thoughtful about the content that they're reading, and so forth. And there's a lot of other bells and whistles too, but the thing I like to point out really quickly in this overview is that we also bake citation capture early into the research process. And what that means is that we're extracting citation information directly from the article, and we're pre-filling a bunch of the fields that you see down here which form the actual citation, which you see at the top up here. And the nice thing here is that if students are making any changes to the citation fields down below, they'll see the impact of their work in real time, because the citation up top will change as they're doing that work. Now, all the work they're doing here, whether they're highlighting, adding comments, editing citation fields, it's all getting auto-saved as they go. So if they run into a bandwidth issue or the browser crashes, they're not very likely to lose their work. Now, where it's all getting auto-saved to is your Scribble library in the cloud. And you can get there either by going to our site and logging in with your credentials, or you can click on this little library button in the toolbar, and it'll open up a new library and you bring you right in. And the library is the place where all of your research is saved, but it's also a place where certain work can be done, like creating a bibliography or creating an outline. And you can see here that in my library, in this example, I've saved web pages. I've also imported bookmarks from my browser. I've actually saved PDFs as well. And we even have ways of being able to capture content from offline books and print sources as well. Whatever you add to your library, you can use tags to organize. But if you're somebody who doesn't like to proactively organize very much, like for example, maybe you don't put things in folders very much, or you don't use tags and labels in Gmail very much, you can kind of be lazy, because we actually full text index all the content in the library. And so what you're seeing here is that you can use the full text search field here to put in a keyword and use that keyword to search the full text of all the articles that you've added in your library. And so it feels very much like a Google search, or just a search in a lot of modern webmail applications, where we'll be able to help you find a needle in a haystack just based on that search term. Now, this happens to be one library for a particular assignment that we're looking at right now. But if I was to click on this little library tab on the left-hand side, you'd see a list slide out. And in that list, you'd see a list of all the other libraries that you have access to. Those could be ones that you've created. They could be ones that you've been invited to. If a teacher creates a library, they can invite the whole class and convert that into a class library, which could be a great way to create a reading list. Or it could be a great way to basically provide resources as a starting point for a research paper or project. And every library has its own set of tags, so that you're not cross-polluting ontologies across different collaborators and projects. And if you're the owner of a library, you can actually define what it's about. You can invite people to collaborate in it, and you can decide what kind of permissions they have in terms of what they can do in it, delete things from it, add things to it, etc. So it's a really great collaborative workspace. Lastly, I should point out that we've integrated a bunch of writing tools here, and we won't have time to kind of go through this in detail right now. But the idea is that with a couple clicks, we can help you generate a bibliography in the bibliography editor, which you can access through this bibliography tab right here. We've also built an outline editor that's baked right into the system here. And that means that you can easily drag and drop your notes and highlights into the outline editor. And we auto number all the bullet points in the outline. You can drag and drop them around. It remembers kind of what the numbering ought to be. And most importantly, when you bring that evidence into the outline, because we know where it came from, since we helped you actually annotate, cite, and curate the article and the evidence at the very beginning of the process, we're able to automatically update your bibliography in the background when you bring that evidence into the outline. And a very similar thing happens when you're in the writing process. So I'm going to show you here, now that we're in the writing part of the process, what it looks like to use our integration with Google Docs through a Google Docs add-on. We have something very similar for Microsoft with the Microsoft Word add-in. Works exactly the same. But in our case, what we've done here is that we've built an add-on for Google Docs that's a sidebar. And within that sidebar, we've basically taken that library that I showed you before and slimmed it down and embedded it right here within the Google Docs interface, so that students have easy access to their research while they're writing their paper. And our add-on is called Scribble Writer, which you can find within the add-ons gallery, within the add-ons drop-down menu that's within Google Docs right here. The basic idea here is that I can easily browse my articles, and if I hover over them, I may come across one that looks interesting to me. I can click on this little right arrow to go one level deeper to see the annotations in that particular article. And then if I hover over those annotations, I may come across one that looks really interesting to me that I want to bring as a quote into my paper. And so I can click on Insert Quote right here, and we'll go and grab that green highlighted text out of the article in the library and drop it into the paper, put it in quotes, and insert it in text parenthetical citation as well. Similarly, if I'm thinking, I did my research 2 weeks ago and I remember highlighting something about Mars, but I can't remember exactly what it is, I type in the word Mars, I click search, we'll basically search the full library and show you all the search results, which are places where the word Mars, which is my search term, appears in any of the notes and highlights I made across any of the articles in that library. And then if I come across something again that looks interesting, I can insert that as a quote again. Now, from a student's perspective, this streamlines a workflow. From a teacher's perspective, or a librarian, if they're actually reading the paper, if you ever come across a quote or a piece of evidence that sounds kind of fishy or taken out of context, normally it would be a lot of work to try to go and validate that. In our case, the in-text parenthetical citation that you see here at the end of each quote that we've inserted is actually a link. And if the teacher clicks on that, it'll take them to the student's library, open up that article, and actually it'll scroll them to where in that article that piece of evidence typically is. So you'd be able to sort of see and quickly validate that evidence in its original context without having to go hunting for it, which could take a lot of time. Now, this is the Sources tab. We also have an Outline tab. So as I mentioned before, but I did not show you, we have an outline editor. And so if you imagine that maybe 2 weeks ago I did my research, last week I created my outline, and today I'm writing my paper. When I first come into the paper that I'm starting this week, if I go to the Outline tab, I can click Insert here, and it'll insert my whole outline into the paper the first time I'm in there. So it becomes a really easy way to kind of bring that outline right into the writing process. And the last thing here is that we've got your Bibliography tab, which has basically automatically been updated every time you bring evidence into the outline or the paper. And we show you that bibliography right next to your paper, and of course, insert it on the last page of the document as well. So I think that, I know we're in the weeds here, but we're in the weeds because, as many of you know, that's where the devil is, right? The pain and the time suck and the tedium is really in kind of all the nitty-gritty of doing this work. And our philosophy is that we live in a time now where software can help automate a lot of the mundane stuff that we all had to suffer through. And our goal is basically to try to use the power of modern software so that we can minimize manual information processing and really free up students' time so they can spend more of that time on the critical thinking aspects of the process, like the structure of the paper, the validity of the evidence, the quality of the sources, and so forth. And so that's kind of like the quick overview demo. I would normally spend more time on this, but I want to make sure that I hand the reins over to Rebecca. I'll just quickly flash this up there so you can see and read this at your leisure. The basic idea is that what we've built at Scribble is broadly useful. It's useful across grades and subjects, although our sweet spot tends to be humanities and general science. And the kind of work we're trying to get students to be better at is the kind of work that they do in a significant way when they go on to college, where they write term papers, or to knowledge economy jobs, where they spend a lot of time creating research reports, grant proposals, white papers for marketing, et cetera. These are the kinds of initiatives that these are the kinds of specific things in schools and districts that we've been told we're helpful for. And then we have certain initiatives that we certainly fit into very, very nicely. And I think the biggest one that we're focused on right now is college readiness. And the nice thing about that is that Scribble is actually a platform that students can take with them when they go to college. The reason for that is that when they fall out of a school or district subscription, they can automatically get dropped down to the free version of the product by associating a personal email address with their account, and then they can take that account with them to college along with their data. And then if they like what they had in high school, for a very affordable price, they can just upgrade back to the paid version, or they can continue to use the free version in college. Okay, I've gone over my time, but I'm going to hand over the reins now to Rebecca, who's going to talk a little bit about how they've been using Scribble, frankly, in her school district.
Well, hi, everyone, and I want to share with you how I use Scribble at my school with my teachers and with our students. So it begins with a teacher, really, and so I'll meet with, I usually meet with teachers and show them that we have put together a LibGuide. We use LibGuides. Let me back up a little here. I guess not. So I can usually start with a teacher and we set up a project. So for example, I set up a conservation project with one of my science teachers, and he wanted to do a project that had to do with annotated bibliography. So we set that up, and he was able to choose how many sources the kids needed and how many words per annotation. Then when I go in and I meet with the class, I show them we have all the resources they need on our LibGuide. So that's where we start with the students, and they go into their Scribble library, and this is where all their resources are, so that they don't always need me there as they're working through this. So this particular project that I want to share with you. So this would be an example of how we were checking progress on the students. And I really like this because it starts out the class where if we say you need three sources, and on the first day we want you to have one source, I can track that. So the kids aren't even leaving the classroom unless they have at least one source in their Scribble library. And I really started using the legend feature this year with classes, and I really liked this example. This was a group project, the students, so they created a shared library, and they came up with their own legend. And when I saw this, I was just amazed at how they were using this tool for their own benefit. There are times where teachers will tell them they want certain things highlighted, certain background or information like that highlighted, and then they'll prescribe what colors. But that was an example of kids who were working on their own. The progress that we talked about. So this is an example where Victor had showed you how you can see the quality of sources that students are finding, but the students can also see that in their own library, and I really like that feature. It also tells them which sources have gone into their bibliography. So which sources are they using and what type of sources are these? Because we really want kids to look at their sources as a whole, not just individually. So they really need to have a variety of sources, and this is a great way for them to have that visual information for their own evaluation. So then the other great thing, this is a new, if you see where I've got my red arrow, this is something new that I just discovered. I can actually leave them bookmarks of sources. So when I go in and I evaluate what the quality of their sources, if I feel that they haven't found enough in-depth information, I can actually create a bookmark or a link within their library. So as you can see, it says from Mrs. Scott, and I leave them a list of sources, usually from our databases, that they can then go through on their own. And so I really like that communication with the students, and this provides that option. I also can then take a look at their sources or their citations, and we go through a whole lesson on looking at what Scribble gives you when it pulls in the information to create the citation, and then they compare it to the format, whether APA or MLA, and then they can decide if it's correct or if they need to make some adjustments. And I just love teaching citations that way. It gives them a place to start. And then, so then I can go in and I can make comments as well. Okay, are the citations correct? Do you need to check again? Do you need to meet with me? And it really makes it very interactive. And I do this before I go into the class so that I'm prepared when I'm really making good use of that class time with students and making it as meaningful as possible. And then the teacher, this particular science teacher that I've been working with on this particular project, is very excited because he just logs into the assignment and he clicks on the tab annotated bibliography, and he can see this right away, and it's very quick and easy for him to grade it as well. And so he is very excited to be using this with his students. So it's great for students and for teachers and librarians. I also have a colleague, I wanted to share her information with you. She's a librarian at a neighboring school, and she has done some great things with the tagging feature. And so she tags for, as it says on the slide here, keywords, specific topics, and source types. I know they do a lot at her school with primary sources. So she'll actually create a tag, tell students create a tag if this is a primary source. Then the teacher or librarian can go in and verify that it is indeed a primary source. She also has one tag on there, if you can see it, it says do not cite. So they do let kids look at Wikipedia. It's a good place to find keywords, but then they're tagging it with something that says do not cite. Again, then the teacher knows, the librarian knows that the kids are looking at it but not citing it. So I really like the way she has used the tagging feature. I think that's a great option for students. And then she also had, if I can get to this slide, some comments from teachers and also her own comments. One that's really near and dear to me as well is the responsiveness of Scribble. We reach out to them when there's a problem, a concern, an idea, and they get back to us right away. And it's great to be able to work with a company like that, to be able to have a part and make this really usable and student-friendly product. So we appreciate everything Scribble does for us and our students and teachers. And our kids love, as you can see here, they love using it as well. So thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Rebecca. I appreciate that. But thanks everybody for joining us. And, we're both available for questions. I think you saw that contact information, so feel free to reach out. And of course, if you're interested in giving Scribble a try, you can certainly go to our website and try it out. You can also just send us an email at contact@scribble.com if you like. But we look forward to working with you all. We love working with librarians, as you can tell, with Rebecca and with Amber. So thanks for your time.